So, without any further ado, let's talk about the blue gods and the purple dawn. So, let's talk about the purple dawn concept first. This is going to get really interesting. So, I don't know how many of you have ever come across the website. I think it's called Saturn Death Cult in your studies, on the path that you're on. But I definitely stumbled across this website called the Saturn Death Cult maybe a couple of years ago. And this is while I was really big into like David Icke and the Saturn moon matrix and all this stuff. And I wasn't a flat earther. I didn't think about the earth being flat at the time. I was really just focused on Saturn, and I saw the Saturn symbolism everywhere, and it was bugging me. I mean, it was bugging me worse than the Mandela effect bugs people today. I mean, I saw it everywhere. I wanted to make sense of it. I wanted to put those puzzle pieces together. And so I stumbled across this website called the Saturn Death Cult. Now, that in combination with the electric universe theory started to really put together some interesting puzzle pieces for me to sort of play with, for me to work with, right? I started putting a lot of information up on my shelf or in the Rolodex of my brain. And I'm going to summarize, okay? So I highly recommend checking it out for yourself. Keep in mind, it's not like according to a flat earth paradigm, but it talks about space and stuff like that. But here's what they say. They say, according to ancient writings and some other references that they cite, that the world in what we call the golden age, that it was, we had no sun, we had no other light, and this is according to them. But according to them, the planet Saturn was huge, and it was big, and it was purple, and Earth was sort of trailing behind Saturn as Saturn gave off this sort of purple dust cloud. I don't know how to describe it, okay? But basically what I'm saying is that the Saturn Death Cult webpage people said that we lived like in this aurora of Saturn, and it was purple for some reason, for whatever reason, right? It had to be purple. So it turned everything a sort of purple dawn, a sort of purple ambient glowing, constant glow. So there really was no need for like a really bright light source. Now, I'm not saying that that's all true. I'm not saying that that's all false. What I am saying is that it really provided an interesting puzzle piece for me, especially when I started thinking about the No Forests on Flat Earth video, where it got me thinking about the ancient world where there were these giant trees and someone had cut them down to form the mesas that we have today. So I wasn't satisfied with just that. I had to move on. Well, who cut down the giant trees? Why were they removed? They must be giant people or giant machines, or what I now term as the Titans, okay? Because I think there's a clear separation between the giants and the Titans. The giants and the Titans. I mean, the word Titan just conveys massiveness, huge beings. I mean, these are Titans. These are the ancient. Don't mess with, because they are powerful just because they're so big. But anyways, so I started thinking about the giant trees. I started thinking about the Garden of Eden and how all these ancient manuscripts talk about the world being a paradise and a garden and giant forms running around our world. Even science came into my mind. Even what we are taught was a puzzle piece, because we're conditioned to think that things were much bigger back then in the form of dinosaurs, right? But if I don't hold on to that attachment of dinosaurs, but I go with the understanding that life was so much bigger back then, right? I started to put together this idea of this garden giant paradise, these huge trees. And then I started to think about how fantasy today, for me, and for many of you out there as well, how fantasy hits home almost more than what we call reality. It really does, right? So I started thinking about the elven people. I started reading books like The Silmarillion and um, um, The Wizard's First Rule, and man, I'm trying to think of the name of that book series. Anyways, this a book series that has a character named Drizzt Do'Urden, who's this dark elf. Anyways, I started thinking about all this stuff, fantasy, but realizing there's probably grains of truth to all of it, especially the elven race. The elven race just permeates all of these fantasy books all over the place, as if there's some sort of strong roots to the concept of there being another race of beings called elves. And when I started to realize that elves are real, elves at least were at some time real and lived on this realm, which was completely different than the realm we live in today. So vastly different that what the realm and the world as it's described in fantasy books pretty much matches what used to be. So anyways, so I started thinking about the elven people. And then I started thinking about the reptilians because I was really big into the reptilians and I didn't know why. Now I know why, because I think that we confuse the reptilian race for the elven race. And I think there's reasons for that. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the purple dawn and the blue gods. So how do we get the purple dawn, right? Well, I'm not so sure that Saturn is like a gigantic gas giant, brown dwarf star way, way out there in space. I think that it's much closer. And I think all the planets and all the stars and our own skylight called the sun is much, much closer, are much closer. And so here's what I'm thinking. I have proposed that before there was a sun and before there was a moon, that our world looked a lot like the Avatar world, where there was giant trees and there were these giant blue, sort of elven-looking, whatever beings on the planet, on the plane, on the planet, right? And I thought that everything must have been bioluminescent because I didn't think there was a need for the sun or for the moon, but there must be a need for light. I mean, we must need to be able to see where we're going, at least to some extent. And so I saw the Avatar world and I saw how everything just glowed. And I was like, that must be it. That must be the answer. It must be bioluminescence. Everything must have been bioluminescent. Now, while that may hold some truth, I have since moved on from that, holding on to that one thought so tightly. Now, I keep in mind that there may have been much more bioluminescence then than there is now, but think about the purple dawn theory. Think about how there may not have been a sun and a moon. We needed a light source, and during this golden age, it was known as the age of Saturn. Right? Now, the purple dawn people say that, well, the Earth was sort of trailing in the wake of Saturn's aura. I'm not so sure. What if we had skylights that were vastly different at the time? What if Saturn itself, or maybe some of the other planets, were a type of gigantic, what we would call today blacklight, right? Something that would give out the same UV radiation, that same UV light that our skin takes in and turns into vitamin D and makes us feel so much better because we're standing in that light. Well, it's because of the UV radiation. So what if the ancient skylights, lights, or what if Saturn itself was a giant, massive black light that illuminated the entire plane? Now, what does a black light do to things in our world, right? Especially things that are white or fluorescent, right? You can imagine it starts to give credence to why this Avatar world looked like everything was kind of glowing. Now, let me see if I can attempt to bring up some pictures. All right, so I'm going to try to bring up some pictures just to give you guys some sort of visuals here. Now, bear with me because I hardly ever do this. I guess I'm sharing now. Present to everyone. There we go. All right, now, one second here. Okay, so here are some pictures. That's me 30 seconds ago. Here's some pictures of the Purple Dawn. I really hope you guys can see this. So these are artist renditions, obviously, of what life may have looked like according to the Saturn death cult people. And they say that like this purple haze sort of enveloped our world, right? And I think that's an interesting idea. So let's introduce a new type of skylight that is much like our blacklight of today. And as you can see, it has an entirely different effect on things in our world, especially on colors and stuff. Now, obviously, it's going to make the fluorescent stuff to be a lot brighter and everything, but what I really would like to concentrate on is the color white. So I'm going to try to find something that's white. Well, let's look at this girl right here. This girl right here is that sort of bluish color that we see these gods being depicted as in these ancient prehistorical times that have been long forgotten and lost to us, right? This right here reminds me of things like the movie Avatar. I mean, why did they have to be blue? They could have chose any color. They could have made them pink or purple or orange or yellow or anything, but they made them this color for a purpose and for a reason. And I speculate that that reason was because it emulated reality. It emulated a time long forgotten and destroyed from our history. All right, so anyways, I'm going to go over to the next little slide I have here. Dr. Manhattan. Now, there are lots of examples of blue gods, blue people in our world. Now, notice on Dr. Manhattan's head, he has this symbol. Now, some people would say, oh, it's the symbol for the sun, but I would say it's really the symbol for Saturn, which may have acted like some sort of gigantic black light, like giving this purple kind of glow to our world and lighting things up in an entirely different way than we have them lit up today. Actually, like I would say that our world today is lit up in a way that doesn't really give the full effect of things like color and substance and stuff like that. But anyways, what are some other famous blue gods? Let's type it in here. Let's type in Krishna. As you can see, Krishna is depicted as being blue, right? This sort of light blue godlike person. So let's move on to the next one. Who else was depicted as being this blue color? Let's see. How about Mystique from the X-Men, right? Now, she didn't have to be blue. She didn't have to look like this. She could have been any color. But she's the shape-shifting blue goddess of the X-Men, basically. Who else do we have? Oh, Superman. I mean, that's a really good one. Now, obviously, Superman himself has like quote-unquote white skin, but I mean, why did his outfit have to be blue for the most part? I mean, look, why does it have to be blue? And if you look closely at pictures like this one, like I pointed out in some of my older videos, you can see that his skin is actually, or his suit, I'm sorry, is actually sort of crystalline in its structure, in its composition. You see that? There's like scales all over. So I think this may harken back to a sort of silica era, a silica age, and an age in which there were different types of beings. But anyways, I did a whole video on Superman, so I'm not going to stay on him for too long. But here's another interesting one. Let me bring it up. All right, so let's look at these godlike alien beings from the movie Prometheus. Okay, well, clearly I'm not talking about this one right here, but I'm talking about this guy over here. Now, let me see if I can find one of like his whole body. Here he is. Now, imagine this sort of albino white gods of times past, right? Now, this is him in today's sunlight. Imagine what this being would look like under the glow of a black light. Can you imagine? He would turn that blue color that we associate with all of these ancient gods. I mean, to me, this makes a lot of sense. It makes so much sense that we would have these tales of these blue gods that came in and, you know, are responsible for manipulating the world, or we have these legends about them. And even maybe, just maybe, these were the elves of old. I mean, we have these preconceived ideas of what the elves look like. Usually the one thing that gives them away is like having pointy ears. Obviously this guy doesn't have pointy ears, but I wonder if this is what their skin may have looked like. I wonder if the elven people were more like this albino sort of white creamy color. And can you imagine what they would have looked like under a giant black light called Saturn, in the age of Saturn, in the golden age, when everything was this garden paradise? So I'm thinking about these alternative skylights that may once have existed and have been now replaced with the one bright, extremely bright white light that we call the sun for some strange reason. But anyways, another thing that I think about is like black lights in general. I mean, a lot of us, when we think about black lights, I mean, you see stuff like this and people sort of imagine like stoners, you know, people who are getting high, and you go into their house or their apartment and they've got all these posters up that are black light special posters. Now the posters, they don't look very cool unless they're under a black light. The black light just brings out this vibrant color, this life in the poster. And I wonder if the reason that you know, who I call the stoners, okay, whatever, I don't know what to call them, but people that enjoy smoking weed under a black light. Anyways, I think that there's a subconscious reason that they're drawn to this type of light. And I think that, you know, for example, I mean, I'm getting a little off track right now, but I think that drugs and stuff like that, especially natural drugs, especially drugs that are really plants that grow out of the ground, I think that these things actually help to tune us in our frequency, and if used the right way can reveal a lot of things to us. Now maybe those people who have been smoking weed and marijuana have sort of tapped into, you know, subconsciously, maybe they've tapped into the ether, and maybe they've connected to something that's been long lost from us, and that's why they feel so close to this type of light and these types of colors and stuff like that. Not just because they're pretty, you know, lots of stuff is pretty, but there's something unique about this black light. And yeah, so I'm going to close these out. I'm going to get back to like regular old me. So we'll get rid of these. And let me see if I can figure it out here. Oh, here we go. All right, see if it works. All right, I think it works. Okay, cool. All right, so anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I mean, there are many other examples that you can find on the internet. Just Google, you know, popular blue people or what have you. They don't have to be blue. I think they're blue for a reason, and I wonder if they're blue because our skylight was created. It's a light machine that was placed into our realm, and we didn't used to need it. We had no need of the sun. We definitely did not have a need of the moon. And so what other types of light were there? Ancient records do talk about, you know, the golden age of Kronos or Saturn, which, according to some people, we sort of basked in this purple glow of Saturn. And I wonder if Saturn maybe was a lot closer, or maybe you know, what we now call Saturn, maybe there was an entirely different skylight at the time. And maybe it was a giant form of black light. And like I said, you know, a lot of people, there's a lot of mixed feelings over my Revelation Sun video, and I think that has a lot to do with, understandably so, has a lot to do with people's, what we've been taught and conditioned about the sun for so long. And there's a lot of mixed feelings there. You know, there are the sun gazers, and there are people that just are very kind of hippie-ish, and they just love the sun, and the sun's so awesome. And I understand that. I mean, I do understand that. It sounds so pleasant. It sounds so nice. But in reality, the reason that our body gets vitamins from the sun, we're not really getting it from the sun in a way, I guess, but we're getting it from the UV radiation, the UV light source that comes out of the sun. Now, can you imagine? I mean, black lights produce UV light. It's ultraviolet. It's ultra purple. It's purple. That's why it's purple. Imagine walking around in a world of the UV light that is constantly, I don't know, I'm just speculating, but it's very, I feel like it's very likely that our, at least the bodies and the whole composition of the world that once was entirely different than the world that of how it is today. I mean, we live in a carbon-based world today. I feel like it's more likely that the world was once more silica-based, and that if that's the case, I mean, I would expect things to reflect that in how they look. Maybe they were more crystalline. Maybe they were more alien-looking than how we're used to seeing them today. But anyways, what else? Let's see. What else? Oh, okay. So I wanted to sort of jump into, wow, there's a lot of people. Hey, I want to say what's up to some guys in the chat. I want to say hi, hello to Flow Natural Hair and the Full Metal Alchemist, of course, and Flat Lives Matter. Or how about Black Lights Matter? Black Lights Matter. I like that. Unlimited Light 3, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to move on sort of from the Purple Dawn theory and my own little spin that I've put on it, which I will be talking about probably more in future videos, because I think this really, man, this really is a strong puzzle piece to the world that I've been putting together in my mind, the world, the way that I see how the world once was. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why our ancient libraries were all burned to the ground, and all of our old manuscripts and important writings were all done away with and burned and destroyed. But so I'll sort of talk about some outro topics. Jazz Sinclair. Everybody, Jazz Sinclair is in the chat. Jazz is one of my good buddies, and I want to let you know, Jazz, I want to tell you something right now, buddy. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy me a tennis racket with my next paycheck, and I'm going to buy some tennis balls, and I'm going to go and I'm going to practice and practice and practice, because you know what? I'm coming, Jazz. I'm going to come out there and we're going to have some good games. So better run some extra lines. I'm just saying. Anyways, so I was talking, just to sort of wrap things up. I was at the beginning of the video, I talked about how Bill Nye is garbage. Okay. Feel free to rewind it and check that out. But he's a comedian. He's an actor. This dude is not official. He's only official because he's been thrust into the spotlight as a mascot. That's all he is. He's a mascot, just like so many others on the television are mascots. Then I talked about, you know, the Bible, and when people mention the Bible, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Try to separate yourself from your feelings and preconceived ideas, and maybe even that hurt that comes along with, you know, what we thought we used to believe. Anyways, it's good to have an open mind and be able to see things without being connected to them. It's using our reasoning to the world around us. What else? Oh, so then I talked about the blue gods and the purple dawn, and how I speculate that the world that once was with the giant trees and it's a garden paradise, we did not have the skylight. We did not have the moon that we have today, the nightlight. But maybe we had, because it was the golden age of Saturn, maybe we had Saturn or some other gigantic skylight that acted more like a black light and gave off an entirely different glow, which would in turn make the things on our realm glow as they did in the Avatar world, and maybe even make beings that had albino-like white skin turn blue. And maybe these are the origins of the blue gods that we've learned about. So, anyways, you guys cracked me up. What else? So, with the outro, I'm going to start talking a little bit about mud fossils, because I think this is an important piece of that puzzle that goes along with everything else. So if you don't know much about mud fossils, there's 3 channels I'm going to highly recommend. 1, Mud Fossil University, or AKA Mud Fossils, the channel on YouTube. 2, Wise Up. Okay, Wise Up. He's a funny dude. All these guys are funny dudes. I mean, who isn't, right? Who on YouTube is not unique and interesting and like just has a character all their own? I mean, you guys are all amazing out there. That's why I love watching Jazz. I mean, you guys need to go check out Jazz Sinclair. He's the one in the chat with the little, I don't know what side it's on, but he's the one with the little tennis ball. He will crack you up, and he will also bend your mind sometimes. But anyways, and if you guys ever have a channel that you want me to check out, feel free to let me know. You know, drop me some channels and stuff. Oh, and the last one is the Age of Disclosure. I keep forgetting that one, but I remember it now. And I think that he's really onto something too. Oh, and you know what? New Earth. I also want to give New Earth a shout out. New Earth is a Russian girl, and she has some really interesting videos. I really need to watch more of them. But yeah, New Earth has a great channel. And she actually wants to take an expedition out to these places called elf castles, and I would love to go. So New Earth, if you're watching, I'm in. Let's go. I want to check out the elf castles because I'm all about the elves, and I want to learn a lot more about the elven race. So, anyways, let's talk about the creation of humans. Now, according to Mud Fossils, he speculates, first of all, we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, or the mammoth in the room, right? Or how the Titan in the room. The Titan in the room. Our world once had giants. That's just a given. I mean, that's just accepted. I mean, lots of people avoid that, and they talk about it and they brush it off as fantasy. And we have movies like BFG, Big Friendly Giant. There's stories like man, my mind just went blank. Oh, Gulliver's Travels, okay? There are countless stories like Jack and the Beanstalk and these ancient tales of titanic beings. Now, don't get me wrong. I feel like the word Titan, I feel like what I'm talking about when I describe the Titans is fairly different than what we refer to as giants. We have shrank the Titans down to what we call giants, okay? We have shrank giants down to being about 15 feet tall, maybe 20 feet tall. I'm talking about Titans, huge godlike beings that we would be grasshoppers in comparison to. So anyways, I think there once were giants. I mean, Titans, excuse me. And I think that the Titans ruled our realm at some point. I think that they terraformed our land, that they did what they wanted to with it. They sculpted it out. They, in my personal opinion, I feel like a lot of them, I feel like there are other lands beyond Earth realm that we live in, our middle Earth. I feel like there are outer realms all around us. And I speculate and wonder if a lot of these titanic beings um, moved out to the outer reaches outside of our middle Earth realm. And, maybe some of them stayed and through the course of events died in some fashion or another. And of course, they had children, or if they didn't biologically produce children, perhaps they created children for themselves. And I also wonder if the size of each offspring sort of just got smaller and smaller and smaller throughout time. So, Mud Fossils speculates that the Titans of old died. Their bodies went down into the earth and literally became a part of what we call the earth. Now, the earth itself has so many anomalies. I would never just chalk up everything as being a giant tree. I would never chalk up everything as being remnants of a titan of old. But there are so many things. That's why it's so important that we use our imaginations, that we think outside of the box, that we stretch our minds to ask ourselves, what if? What could it be? What are some other ways to see this? Seeing things from other perspectives. But anyways, before I digress, what if this happened? What if there were these titans? What if there was some wars or whatever happened and the titans other, right? Sort of like in a futuristic god battle that the Norse refer to as Ragnarok. These godlike titans clashed and they fought and they killed one another and destroyed one another. And those who survived maybe left this realm because it was destroyed and it was a war zone. So maybe they left to go build their own titanic cities outside in other realms. Now, maybe throughout the course of time, their offspring, their creations that they continue to make, their children, perhaps at some point the elven race had been created. And maybe is that we have just delegated to fantasy and fiction. But the ones that I like to talk about are the elves. Now, let's say that this elven race was created. Let's just say, and I'm speculating, I'm using my imagination, I'm guessing, but I'm also taking a lot of the puzzle pieces and I'm taking one thing here that's sort of like hard evidence, and I'm taking another thing that's way over here. And in order to connect the two, I have to the gaps. Okay. I have to become Indiana Jones. I have to think outside of the box, right? I have to reverse engineer it in my mind. So anyways, the elven race was created. The elven race came about. And they're known to have been very advanced compared to humans in many ways. They were known to live for what seemed like forever. I mean, they just lived for a very long time in comparison to us. And so perhaps they too were seen as godlike beings. Now, can you imagine if we had these elven beings, these elves, El, the gods, El literally means God. If we had these elves or elves walking around, and then all of a sudden we had, well, let's just say this. Let's just speculate and say that most of the Titans died, right? And they went into the earth. And let's say at some point in time, right, that their bodies sort of became a part of the earth. And we have these ancient accounts of the elves or the gods taking up the earth itself, the clay, and forming humans, forming mankind out of the clay, also known as the earth, also known as the remnant bodies left over from the Titans. How can you make a human being out of what we call rock or mud unless there's DNA within it to manipulate and to use that DNA strand, that coding, to form new life after the Titans that fell, or Titanfall, for you video game lovers out there. Anyways, so let's say that these L's created and shaped a new type of being that was based on their gods, or the older type of beings that are now gone. So Mud Fossil speculates that this type of clay is called kaolin clay. And it's really interesting because I Googled it, and man, I learned a lot about it. And basically, kaolin clay comes about from decomposition. I mean, how interesting is that? Something has to decompose in order to turn into this type of clay. Now, I looked up the different colors of these types of clay, and guess what? The major colors are this pinkish color that you see here, a yellowish color, a brownish color, and even like a gray color. I mean, it's not too much of a stretch of the mind to think that these colors might also be representative of these races that have come about. Now, of course, I'm not saying any of this is absolute truth. I'm just saying, let's think about it. I'm just saying, let's speculate, let's imagine, let's put some pieces together. So I highly recommend checking out, let's see, who do I want to give shout outs to? Who wants a shout out? How about that? Who out there right now would like a shout out? I don't know if you guys have your own YouTube channels. I think Jay Analyze does. So I'm going to say go check out Jay Analyze's page. If anybody else wants me to check out your page, just let me know and I will. So, okay, Double X wants you to check out Double X's page, XX. All right, so anyways, I think I'm pretty much done. I'm going to jump off on my soapbox now. I think I've hit up every point that I could think of. I'm really excited about this idea of the ancient skylights in the world. I got to come up with a name for it. You know, you can't really say prehistory. I guess I could use that. I can't really say the ancient world because people have, you know, people have so many concepts about the Greek world or the Roman world as being ancient. Those worlds are not really ancient. Not to me, at least. I'm thinking much further back. Maybe not in time, but a whole different era, a whole different way of life. Oh, so Flow Natural Hair says if anyone is having hair loss, visit their page. You can learn how to grow your hair. What else, though? Oh, Lewis Mitchell has a channel called Randomopolis TCG, and it's all about different dimensions. That's pretty cool. Okay, so anyways, I'm gonna take off. Man, I really want to stay in chat more. I'm kind of losing my voice though, so I'm gonna wrap it up. I think we've hit some really interesting points. I think that's enough food to take in for now. I think we should probably digest a lot of this stuff and just marinate, let it marinate in our heads and just sort of meditate on it. And let me know what you guys think, you know? If you guys, I really encourage everybody to start putting your own pieces together. That's why I say think outside of the box, you know? I never want people to just come to my channel for answers or to come to my channel to like, to just to learn and that's it. You know what I mean? I want you guys to be encouraged by my thoughts and my creativity and my ideas about world and about the world and life in order to push the boundaries of your own mind. You know what I mean? To really just come up with new and interesting ideas all your own. And then I would love to hear about it. So, right on. All right. So I'm going to go now. I want to bid you all a fond night. And in case I don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Thanks for watching.